During our research expedition to Britain, Norway, and France earlier this year, I had the opportunity to visit a mysterious ancient pyramid that mainstream history claims should not exist. Locals call it Le Pierre de Coire, in English, the Pyramid of Couhard, but to historians, it's a complete mystery. And some believe that it hides a secret link between the Druids of Gaul, the Romans of Augustus, and even the priests of ancient Egypt. This is the French town of Autun. And forgive my pronunciation, my French is how you say Le Poupe. Do not be my guest, it is very bad. But this area was once known as the mighty Augusta Dunham, the sister city of Rome. And before the area became co-branded with Rome, it was once the mighty Celtic capital of Bibrocht, a civilization known for its warriors, merchants, and druids, who called themselves the Aedui, the people of fire. On this hill just above Autun stands the pyramid, a lonely stone giant that pierces the sky. It stands about 75 feet high, which is slightly shorter than its original height, and it's older than the town around it, but nobody knows what it was for or who built it. Archaeologists try to frame it as Roman, a monument from the 1st century, but as with so many things that archaeologists pull out of their behinds, that's pure speculation and completely wrong. Just wait. This gets interesting. As I said earlier, the pyramid is now shorter than it originally was. It's been messed with a lot over the centuries. But there are early drawings and folklore that state that it was encased with white marble, and that marble has been stolen to create the local church. In any case, the pyramid was originally 33 meters high, which should perk up a lot of people's ears out there. And it was a true pyramid. It had precise angles and a square base. And that is an interesting correlation with another out-of-place pyramid, the Pyramid of Cestius in Rome, which I visited last year. The Pyramid of Cestius is said to be 36 meters high, but I don't think that's entirely accurate due to ongoing renovations that have happened over the centuries. We also have several antique books in the Museum of Terror collection that state otherwise. I would wager that both of these pyramids were the same height when they were built. And if we're all being completely honest, they're the same height, the same shape, and with the casing stones on the Pyramid of Couhard, it'd be very easy to see how these would be sister monuments. But there's even more to the story, because the Pyramid of Cestius was not the only pyramid in Rome. I'm going to show you the Egyptian connections to the Vatican right now. Directly behind me, you can see the Vatican and St. Peter's Square, the solar calendar. And if I turn 180 degrees directly behind me, you'll see Castle St. Angelo. The street that connects the two was once known as Via Cornelia, from Cor Nilis, meaning the heart or the soul of the god of the Nile, who was called Nilo or Nilis. And this street marks the line where the sun rises on the equinoxes. And through a wonderful coincidence, I just happened to be here on the autumnal equinox. And the reason I'm standing directly between the two sites is that if I turn again, you'll see a church behind me with a large billboard on the front. And on that site in ancient times, there stood a pyramid that matches the pyramid that is currently in Rome, the Pyramid of Cestius. Now that ancient pyramid, the Pyramid of Ramus, has since been dismantled to use as building material for this church. Before history had been fully sanitized, what is now called the Pyramid of Cestius in Rome was known by another name. The two pyramids in Rome were known as the mausoleums of Romulus and Remus, and they weren't considered Roman, they were considered pre-Roman Etruscan. The pyramid or mausoleum of Romulus that formerly sat in front of the Vatican up until the 1400s was built on the sacred road, the Road of Light, which was literally the path of the sun and the road of the god of the Nile. Past the Pyramid of Remus, the Etruscan pyramid, down a processional road that was lined with statues of lions, leading to the site of the necropolis and the synthesis of temples for various gods and religions that were throughout the empire, including Cybele and Attis and their sacred pine cone that is in the Vatican today, as well as the Egyptian gods. These temples exalted the ideas of death and rebirth through nature. The area that the Vatican sits on today was once a pagan necropolis, where people went to learn the ideas of death and how to live life and die in style, and not cowering for favor from an imaginary savior that was ripped off from earlier ideas. Now we have 3 pyramids, 2 in Rome and 1 in France, all copies of one another. And to take it one step further, the pyramids in Rome and France appear to have been built the same. During excavations at the Pyramid of Romulus in 1948 and 1949, they, quote, brought to light an extensive foundation made of cement, conglomerate, and fragments of tuff, oriented northwest to southeast. This has been identified as the remains of the core structure of the pyramid, destroyed down to ground level. So it appears that the basic structure of the pyramids in Rome are made out of a geopolymer concrete with fragments of tuff, which looks an awful lot like the geopolymer concrete agglomerate stuffed with rocks that makes up the Pyramid of Kohard. And all of these appear to have been sheathed in casing stones, giving them their finished look. And as I understand it, the casing stones from the Pyramid of Romulus built the front steps of St. Peter's. Now, doesn't that just figure that they would destroy an ancient sacred site to turn into steps so they could trample them underfoot while they walked into their new gilded Disneyland theme park for their slave religion? That's the kind of intolerance I've come to expect from the Abrahamic religions, where their complete disdain for the rest of humanity made for some wonderful tourist traps like the Vatican. Look at everybody queuing for Jesus. And it's funny to me that they did the same thing in France as they did in Rome and tore apart this pyramid to build the church. And I don't mean funny, ha-ha funny. I mean funny as in humanity can be really disgusting. And as I said earlier in the video, these monuments were known to have been Etruscan monuments up until the 1700s, when history seems to have been rewritten, and these monuments and many others in Rome were retconned into Roman monuments. And I'm just going to lowball it for you. They don't want you looking at who the Etruscans actually were, or how many connections the Etruscans actually have to the Egyptian civilization. During the same expedition, I went north of Rome to the Italian town of Orvieto, and they certainly don't want you looking at what was going on with the Etruscans and other groups in that town. Orvieto is believed to be the center of the Etruscan religion, an area known as Fanum Botumni, their religion drawing very heavily from the Egyptian religion and mysteries of death and rebirth. There have been recent excavations that found underground pyramids that have been carved into the rock under Orvieto. And Orvieto was a main center for the Italian branch of the Cathars. The church does not want you digging too deeply into who the Gnostic Cathars actually were, or to realize that the French Cathars that were wiped out in the Albigensian Crusade spread all the way into northern and central Italy, and Orvieto was one of their main towns. The simple fact that the Etruscan rulers had long heads just like the Egyptian pharaohs, and just like the long-headed skulls that I recently uncovered in one of my videos on Malta, as well as the long-headed Cathars in southern France, where their head shape was known as the Toulouse deformity, as well as the Burgundians in Burgundy, which is where Autun and the pyramid is. That should show you that this was a connected group of people, and they all might have been the same damn group of people, called by different things to cover up who they actually were. We briefly touched on the placement of these pyramids, that they were put along solar markers, the path of the sun during various points of the year, their relationship to the solar cycle, and its relationship to the death and rebirth cycle that was sacred to these people. You can see it right here. The cornucopia held by the god of the Nile coming out of the mysteries of the Sphinx, the mysteries of death and rebirth, symbolizing the bounty that comes from the world after it's been reborn in the spring, and you can see the pyramid and the pine cone in his cornucopia. This is Osiris. This is the god who is reborn. Just because somebody carved him with the native artistic style of their culture doesn't mean it's not the same character. And just because we haven't had a chance to discuss it yet, The Pyramid of Cestius in Rome does have a solar alignment, just like the pyramid that stood in front of the Vatican. Cestius, or the Pyramid of Ramus, is aligned to June 21st, the summer solstice, at high noon, and the alignment point is from the Egyptian temple that stood on the site of the Vatican. There is a secondary alignment for that pyramid on December 21st, the winter solstice, at high noon, from the Isis temple, the other Egyptian temple that stood in Rome across from the Pantheon, but that is a story for another time. People walk past famous remnants of that temple every day in Rome, and they have no idea that they belonged to an Egyptian temple, so we will discuss that in a future video. The next obvious question is, if we know about the pyramid alignments in Rome, what about the pyramid in France? I was able to find one solar alignment that makes sense with the Pyramid of Kohard. Ancient Augusta Dunham had a temple of Apollo in the center of town, and if we take our solar calculator and put it directly over that spot and look at the highest point of the solar year, June 21st, the summer solstice at high noon, the spoke goes directly over the Pyramid of Kohard. And if you pull the map out even farther, you'll see that that spoke continues on all the way directly over Rome. Now, I don't know for sure if those two sites were meant to be connected by that alignment, but I do find it intriguing. And there's one more interesting anomaly that I need to show you about the Pyramid of Kohard. This is a beautiful antique map from Brown and Hogenberg in 1575, and it shows Autun, or Augusta Dunham. As I said, history has been sanitized since those times, and many of the politically problematic place names that were present then and in common use have been replaced today with other names. And so it is with the Pyramid of Kohard, because at that time it wasn't known as Kohard, it was known as Concubar. Anyone watching who's familiar with Gaelic or Irish folklore, your ears might be perking up right now because of the name Concubar and its relation to the legendary king of Ulster. And the Celtic and Druidic folklore in relation to this pyramid is plentiful, but historians don't want to touch a pyramid being related to the Druids with a 10-foot pole. Even though the legendary book, the Electromagnetic, is very clear about the Irish connections with Egypt. So why would they refer to that mountain and the pyramid on it as the place of sexual bonding and sexual intercourse? My belief is that this was a holdover reference to the earliest understandings of what that pyramid was meant to represent. Hierogamy, the sacred marriage, the marriage of heaven and earth, of the human soul and the divine. Much of the folklore that you'll find about the Pyramid of Kohard is related to the Druids and Druidic lore. And I believe that the pyramid and the hill that the pyramid was on were what was considered a mesomphalos, that is to say, an earth navel, a sacred hill that was often on the outskirts of an important town that had a water source, where the Druids would go to do their convocations and their rituals and their healing. And so it was with the pyramid. When I visited, the people who were there, the only people who were there, were using the parking lot to hike up the mountain to the various waterfalls that cascade down the mountain, with their ending spring right next to the pyramid. In fact, this is the old rusted-out pump for the spring that is under the pyramid. I can tell you that the site feels wonderful energetically. To me, it looks like it's being powered by the water underneath, as with so many of these ancient sacred sites that seem to receive a charge or energy from the wells and the water in the springs or the geology underneath. It is a very real thing, and we've seen it time and time again at various sites all over the world, specifically the earth navel or omphalos sites, such as this, the ancient healing center of the Asclepion in Pergamum, Turkey, that was powered by underground water sources and supposedly radiated the serpent energy that was used for healing that you can see represented here on the omphalos stone. Now, before we wrap up with Autun, I want to show you one last thing that I've never seen mentioned anywhere else, and nobody else has any video of or has done any kind of analysis on it that I can find. When you stand on the side of the pyramid and look out over the town, you see that it's a large, flat plain. And there's two things that are out of place. Two large hills that seem to be just a little too symmetrical. I've never seen these mentioned, so I had to drive over and check them out. And sure enough, They looked to be two large, symmetrical, rounded hills, and they looked oddly similar to the mound at Silbury Hill in England that I had been to just a few weeks before. So I pulled out the drone to do a flyover, and I was hit with a real anomaly that absolutely perplexed me. Flying near these hills completely drained 2 full drone batteries. The standard flight times range anywhere from 20 to 35 minutes, and you tend to err on the side of being lower when you're moving around and taking video. But the 2 full batteries that I tried to use drained in 3 minutes. Normally I'd be scratching my head, but I've noticed this before at other mound sites that are actual energetic sites. This is video from a few years ago at the Crack Mound in Krakow, Poland. And this is my GoPro, and it keeps discharging. The battery's doing the same thing, just catastrophically discharging even though it was mostly full. And it only did it when I got right up to the base of the mound and started climbing. If I was 20 feet away, it was perfectly fine and the camera worked as normal. I'm telling you guys, for all the hand-wavy woo-woo claims about energy at sacred sites, some of these sites have a very real electromagnetic, magnetic, energetic impact on devices, on people, on things in the environment. And I didn't have the proper equipment to be able to test it when I was there, but one of these days I'm going to have to get back there. For now, I'm going to put a question mark on it and say this might be an actual undiscovered mound site or pyramid site in the middle of France. So now I've shown you these pyramids in Europe that shouldn't exist according to mainstream history. You've gotten a good close-up look at them and their actual history, and I've given you some indication of what group might be responsible for actually building them and their cultural and genetic links with Egypt. So what do you think? You've probably checked out my videos about the Maltese skulls and the Knights Templar, and you know I love bringing you the rare, hard-to-find information that you can't get anywhere else. And I've got a huge backlog of footage and information, and I just need to know what you might be looking for next. So jump in the comments and let me know. And as always, we're not funded by anybody. We fund this ourselves through the Museum of Tarot shop. So if you're interested in any of our cutting-edge consciousness enhancement devices like our Mind-to-Mind unit, our Halo Pulse, our Halo Net, our Dicyan Aura goggles, or any of our suppressed reprint books, stop on by and grab some today. It gives us the opportunity to keep doing this and to keep bringing you this information. And we appreciate each and every one of you who stops by. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Until next time, be good to yourself.